I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today, my guest is Shubhraji. Hi there.
How are you?
We're wonderful. Thank you for coming again.
You're welcome.
Those of you who haven't been around for a while, Shubhraji has been, we were just talking about this, been a guest here, I think 4 or 5, maybe this is the 6th show, but it's been almost 2 years since she's been on, so we're going to reintroduce her and her teachings to you all. Shubhraji is a disciple of His Holiness Swami Chinmayananda, and she's the founder and head of Namaha, which means to prostrate or surrender to the divine, Vedanta Center for Spiritual Unfoldment, and that's in Woodstock, New York. And she is a teacher of meditation and scriptural text. Today's prophetic topic is free from cravings and desirous of liberation. And that is a phrase that comes from verse 1 of the Atmabodha by Adi Shankara, with commentary by His Holiness Swami Chinmayananda. The entire first verse reads as follows: I am composing this Atmabodha, this treatise on self-knowledge, for those who have purified themselves by austerities, who are peaceful in heart, who are free from cravings, and desirous of liberation. And we're going to talk about what that all means. But before we even do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about His Holiness.
I was introduced to my teacher, Swami Chinmayananda, when I was 14. I wasn't looking, I wasn't searching. In fact, I was an atheist. And when I met him, I think I've said that on your show previously, I was struck by his personality, the outer. But then as I got to know him and got to listen to him speak, I was struck by the words, the truth coming from his heart, and with simple ways, he touched something in me and woke me up from this sleep of being just an ego, of being a little teeny-weeny limited entity, and showed me there's a bigger world, and showed me there is something more to who I am. So that began my spiritual path, and as I went to school and as I, lived in the world as a teenager, I enjoyed everything, but this teaching never left me. And I became closer and closer to my guru, my master, traveled the world with him, served him, and I learned not only by listening to him talk, but by being with him, watching him, how he dealt with challenges, how he remained composed, nothing could ruffle him. And so I made a conscious choice to be like him, to be a better person, and to live this life of freedom and joy.
2 questions. First question is that opening. Can you expand upon what that felt like, looked like?
To be honest, at that time, I really did not know what was happening. It just made me feel loved. It made me feel like he accepts me just the way I am. So it began with a more heart connection, and then slowly, as I heard him speak, I realized that there is a bigger thing going on, and that when I'm connected to the spirit within me, when I'm connected to the deeper part of me, the best in me comes out, which means changing the way I think, changing the idea that this world is a horrible place and that I am limited, I'm a victim. So really getting out of that, and that opening was a sense of freedom, that there's nothing out there to blame, and that I am responsible for my life and I can shift it if I'm aligned to something higher.
And that's going to take us right into this theme. But I have one more question I wanted to ask. You've spent all this time with His Holiness. Did you go through the self-realization process? Is there a title that you have and you don't use?
There is no title. The truth is the truth. And even one who experiences the truth can't communicate it to you. It's like trying to tell an 8-year-old child what is love, in the sense of what is romantic love. So the point is, it's such a personal experience, and talking about it would bring you right back into the ego and into the little I. So all I can say is that the journey is the journey from a limited ego to a vast, expansive, egoless self, being.
Do you find that you answer questions and like, where did I know that from?
I think now more and more I'm comfortable, and I know that everything is coming from that one source.
Exactly.
And that source is the source, the light of consciousness within me, which is also within you, which is within everyone. So some of us who are fortunate to have that guidance in every tradition find and reconnect with that source, and others, they also have it. Everyone is divine, but it gets kind of covered. So they may not be aware of their own divinity, of their own expansiveness.
Would you attribute that to karma?
Karma is a heavy, loaded word. I feel karma means action, but what the crux of the whole thing is, your thought and your feeling. Whatever you feel and whatever you believe, whatever you think, you act from that. If you think that I don't have enough, then you want to take from others. But if you think you're abundant, then you give and share. So really it's all about the inner thinking, the perception of the mind.
My beliefs, my intentions, they create my reality. Okay, so let's go breaking this down a little bit further. What's Vedanta?
Vedanta, literally 2 words, Veda, Anta. Veda means knowledge, to know. Anta means the end of all knowledge. So it is a universal teaching which gives you the knowledge of yourself. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? In a nutshell, that's Vedanta.
And it's based on a series of teachings written and...
Well, it was a revelation to the master sitting in the Himalayan mountains, wondering, asking this question, searching for something more, and really searching for what we all search for, happiness, bliss. I want to be happy, that's the bottom line. So to them, who had made their instrument a channel, who were free from desires, who were free from cravings, who just wanted to bask in the essence of being, these revelations came as scripture, and they were later written out around 1500 BC, and they are called the Vedas.
And since we're going to be talking about a book, can we define that process? We got the Vedas, we got the Upanishads, we got the Sutras.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about, I'll just hold this book up now, the Atmabodha, which we talked about. And this is written by Adi Shankara, and it was basically commentary by His Holiness. So, how did we get from the Vedas to Adi's book and His Holiness's translation?
Okay, the Vedas are huge. There are 4 Vedas, and they contain different portions. They contain the ritual portion, they contain prayers, they contain meditation. At the end of it, Veda Anta, they are the Upanishads. Well, as people started becoming more and more stressed and their intellect couldn't grasp those ideas in a flash, the masters started bringing their own commentaries, and Vedavyasa wrote the Bhagavad-Gita, which is man, written by man. And so later on we started having different books written by different masters, and Adi Shankara only came in between 7th and 9th century AD. He was a prolific master of Advait Vedanta, the philosophy of non-dualism, and he reinterpreted and he revitalized the existing philosophy and removed a lot of false notions that were in society at that time.
So the false notions were a distortion of the lack of understanding of the original teachings.
Absolutely, because the ritual has a place, but people had made ritual the God. Ritual is only meant to quiet your mind. So, and there were all these different notions floating around of dualism, what is God. He came and simplified, and he re-established the Hindu dharma and the Vedic philosophy, which is universal. It's not a religion. It can be practiced and lived by anyone. We don't convert. You can be a Christian and take from the philosophy and use it. You can be a Buddhist, a Muslim. It doesn't matter. It's universal.
Yes, it is. We talked about that, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But this first verse, which we're going to get to in a few moments, touches on things that triggered that exact concept. That I went back and looked at the Four Noble Truths. I looked at the Sermon on the Mount, and they're all focusing on the same thing. But let me just back up. So you used the term Advaita Vedanta. Can you explain? So that's now an offshoot of...
No, it's not an offshoot. It's the main philosophy that's contained in the Vedas, which is that there is only one energy, one consciousness, one God. Hindus don't believe in many gods, though we have many gods who are like aspects, like different attributes of that one energy. But there is one energy, and everything that you see as many, 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 in fact, the essence is only one. It's energy vibrating in a different form. So one gold, which appears as different ornaments, a chain, a ring, a bangle, but in essence it is only gold. We are stuck on the form and the function. So Advait Vedanta means there is one energy, one consciousness. We don't even call it God, because it goes really deep. One consciousness which appears as the creator. Not only that, which appears as the created, the world, and it appears as you, as an individual, who is actually in essence the same, but has forgotten who he or she is. And so gets caught up in this illusion, disconnecting himself or herself from that one energy, consciousness, or God.
So the prophetic topic, free from cravings. If we are seeing the oneness, there would be no craving. It's the separation that creates the perception of the separation that creates the craving.
Yes. Just let's look at it briefly. When do I have a craving? I have a craving and a desire when I feel I'm incomplete, and when I get that, I will be complete. So craving comes from a feeling of incompleteness. But if you understand that there is only one, and that nature of the one is important. It's not enough to say there's one God. What is the nature of that God? What is the nature of that consciousness? It is fullness. It is peace. It is love. It is immutable. It is omnipresent. And when I understand that the deepest part of me, this is the direct teaching, is that fullness, is that love, is that, what craving will there be? I am already complete, but I don't know it, so I crave. This is like, you have to go step by step. You can't just throw it out there and then people will get confused that I should never have any desire. It doesn't mean that. We all have desires. We've come in with them. So it doesn't mean we should suppress that desire. See, this is the place where religion causes a lot of problems.
We're not here to suppress the desire. We're here to recognize the folly of that desire. We're one with what we're desiring, so why should we be desiring it?
Yeah, no, but I say there's no problem if you have a desire and you fulfill it and you don't harm anybody with that desire or harm yourself. So the desire is just like anything. It doesn't become a desire anymore. It's just being in the moment. But if you crave something and you think that that desire is going to make me happy, that's the illusion. Because no matter how many desires you have, they're not going to make you completely happy. They're going to give you some sensation, some joy, some pleasure. That's the problem.
So the teaching becomes fulfill that desire to find out it doesn't fulfill you.
Right.
And so if we were to chase our desires, for the soul experience of realizing that they're not going to make me any better, I then clear away the path so I can focus in on the oneness.
I would also say, add to what you're saying is, understand why you have these desires. And also understand, if you fulfill these desires intelligently, then ask yourself the question, am I now completely happy? And invariably you will find there's some more desire. So then go after that, gaining which you don't have the feeling that there is something more to desire to fulfill myself because I'm already complete. Does that make sense?
Okay, I want to go back to, yes, it does. You asked the question, why do I have these desires? Again, I'll go back to my favorite response. It's karma. I mean, I've talked about this on the air. I'm a recovering drug addict. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I was a drug addict. Was I a drug addict because I owned an opium den and I took advantage of people and their sickness and I had to feel the other side? That's all, it's theory. It's what did I do? Because again, in theory, I could have stopped when I was 18. I could have never stopped. I stopped when I was 38. So getting back to what you said, it's action. What action am I taking? Is how do I know why I'm doing what I'm doing?
Where does the action come from? It comes from your thought. So it's that thought, the notion, when I don't know I'm complete, I feel that void, and to fulfill that void, I do all this. So karma is nothing but thought. And then that thought leads to an action, and that action in the future has some reaction.
Yes.
And that reaction causes me to be a drug addict, a drunkard, or whatever. Even people who are not. We are all a product of karma. But that's not the point. The point is, I'm in this mess, how do I get out?
Exactly. And when I surrender to the fact that I'm in that mess, I get out of partial dualism, which is self-will, and I see that there's only other will left for me is God's will, so to speak.
There are many layers to this. What you're talking is very high, and somebody just tuning in and not having any background might get confused. So the whole thing is, we start from wherever we are. And according to our temperament, we can choose a path of pure surrender and devotion. But then there is also the path of knowledge. So it's different layers as you cut through. If you get the knowledge of what's really going on, then only you can surrender. So it's hand in hand. It's like two wings of a bird. We need to surrender, but we also need the right knowledge. An action which is based on surrender, love, and knowledge, that action itself becomes yoga.
Perfect segue. Define yoga. Because I think a lot of people watching think yoga is just a bunch of stretches.
Well, yoga, the word comes from the root word yuj, means to join, to have union with. And traditionally, yoga was not hatha yoga, what it is today. So yoga is Asana, what is being taught today is just posture, which is asana, but yoga covers a much more wide scope of things. So yoga means a technique, a practical approach, the way to reach something, the practical way to reach it. The philosophy is the philosophy, and yoga is the practical approach to reach this oneness, this union within you. So yoga means that really. There are different yogas, the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of love, devotion, the yoga of action, and there is hatha yoga, which is the yoga of, postures.
You talked earlier about the Bhagavad-Gita. In the chronological sequence, did the Atmabodha come after the Bhagavad-Gita?
Yes.
Okay.
The Bhagavad-Gita was written way back, and Adi Shankara wrote commentaries on Vedanta, on the Upanishads, which are the end of the Vedas, as well as the Bhagavad-Gita, and he wrote his own texts, which are short texts. They are called books of categories, Prakarana Granthas. And he wrote a whole number of these books, and one of them is Atmabodha. He lived only till the age of 32, and he accomplished a volume of work.
So this particular book outlines a particular path, one of the 4 paths.
This book outlines the path of knowledge, but no path is without the other paths.
It's what we choose to make predominant.
Not only that, Vedanta is a very practical philosophy. If you are more devotional and I give you a book and 10 books and tell you study more, it won't work. So we have all these paths according to the person, their capacity and their interest. Choose whichever path you want. They're all interconnected and they will lead you to that one goal. So here the emphasis is on self-inquiry in this book. But Shankara has written other books where he is full of devotion.
So, how do we define knowledge?
Knowledge is that which sets you free. Knowledge is that which removes the darkness of ignorance. What is the spiritual ignorance? That I'm limited, that I'm incomplete, that I'm separate from everybody else, that I need to feel more secure, and I will feel more secure when I have more and more. This is all termed as spiritual ignorance or avidya. And true knowledge is the teaching to tell you, hey, you are already that which you are seeking. This is what Vedanta says. If you are seeking happiness, the source of happiness is within you. And the books and the teachings, they just lead you to that.
I'm going to read the first verse, which it's a number of phrases in here. We already touched on knowledge that I think are important. I am composing this Atmabodha, the treatise on the self-knowledge, for those who have purified themselves by austerities, who are peaceful in heart, who are free from cravings and desirous of liberation. So we just touched on knowledge, self-knowledge. Mm-hmm. So I want to just clarify, it's not somebody sitting around saying, I can quote chapter and verse of this book, this book, and this book. It's the knowledge that gets us to the understanding of the oneness, of the undescribable, indefinable power of the source.
Yes.
That's the knowledge we're seeking, not to be able to say, oh yeah, verse 1 is yada, 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 yada.
Self-knowledge, knowledge of who am I?
Yes.
How should I be in relationship with everyone else? Why do I feel threatened? If everything is one, why do I feel threatened? Is it you who's bad? Or is it there's something I'm not getting inside? So that is self-knowledge. Who am I, really? Am I my emotions? Happiness comes, I get overrelated. Confusion comes and sadness comes, I get down in the dumps. Can I be equipoised? Can I be balanced no matter what emotion is coming? Do I really understand that I'm complete?
So now we have self-knowledge it talks about. And the next phrase, it says purified. What does that mean?
Well, purified in every language, even in the Bible, Jesus says, pray with a pure heart. Now, a pure heart doesn't mean I have a halo around my head, I'm pure and you're impure. In spiritual language, purity means quietness and alertness of mind and heart. If you have too much agitation, if you have too many cravings, if you have too many thoughts, it's called spiritually impure. It doesn't mean you're a sinner. But when your mind can be quiet, when you're balanced, it means there's purity of heart, and knowledge takes place in that heart. Prayer takes place in that pure heart.
I want to quote something because you mentioned Jesus. And it's somewhat known as the Sermon on the Mount. Technically, it's the Gospel according to St. John, King James Version, chapter 4, paragraphs 21 through 24. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And there's a wonderful book out, Swami Chinmayananda, who looks at the Sermon on the Mount from the Vedanta perspective. And he's saying here, to recognize God alone as the only real cause and the only real power in existence, and that in heart is without ego. So, I mean, teachings are practically identical.
Yes, practically.
Yes. I mean,
but there's a lot of different layers.
Yes.
And there's a lot of similarity.
Yes. I mean, at the core, I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's part of the message. You know, we talked about this off camera before about doing a panel discussion, choosing one of these books and just seeing the similarities between all the religions, how they all teach the same thing. They have different rituals, different beliefs, different layers.
The bottom line is
exactly.
What are you doing with your life?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how you reach. Get on the wagon and reach.
Yes.
There's no fight about that, and this is the understanding. That's why you have so many teachers and so many books. Everybody can't eat the same food. So everybody needs a different approach. That's all it is.
And we have so many teachers. There must be a lot of people out there starving. It talks about austerities. You want to define austerities.
See, the path is very simple. Generally, man is extroverted. We look outside to fulfill ourselves. We look to an impermanent world. We look to things that are changing to find changeless joy. And in that extrovertedness, we become more and more agitated because things don't always go our way. We start becoming dependent on something outside. When we become too dependent on the outside world to fulfill us, I become dependent on your mood to feel happy, then I lose my freedom, I lose my equipoise, I lose my own power. So the path is turn within. And in order to turn within, you have to remove the mind from its distractions outside, because the distractions tire you, they wear you out. And in order to work within, you have to do some austerity. It's not that you're a sinner. It's not that you don't know, you're intelligent. But you're looking for love in the wrong places. You're looking for fulfillment out there.
That's a country western song.
Yeah, true. So when you turn in, you have to change the way you think. So by doing these austerities, they are not something harsh disciplines. By moving the mind inward in a spirit of love, you make the mind single-pointed, and that brings so much energy. And you realize you have so much energy which you're leaking away. And that's what the real aim of austerities is. So it should be intelligent self-control.
I don't know the exact chapter and verse, but I just want to quote another gospel. Jesus was quoted as saying, it is easier to get the camel through the eye of the needle than it is to get a rich man into heaven. We're focused on the outside. I need the power, I need the glory, I need the glamour to make me okay. And they can never make me okay, because what's making me okay I already have, and I have to nurture it and allow it to grow. I Okay, that right into the next one. What is peaceful in heart? I mean, it's almost redundant from what was austerities.
I think we've already spoken about it, because peaceful in heart means when I have selfishness, when I want more and more to feel complete, my mind will never be peaceful. I'm always looking for something out there. And when I become selfless, when I become in the spirit of love, I feel you as my own self. In essence, we are life. Life in you and life in me is one. I see you as my friend. We may not agree on everything, so what? Then I can allow you to be who I am. I can allow myself to be who I am. And that allowing is born out of an understanding that we are one in essence. We are one brotherhood, one sisterhood, one humanity. That's at the outer level. But in a Vedantic level, we are one self. There's no difference in essence. And then I become peaceful.
And we are one self in something that is so far beyond our comprehension that you and I could have contradictory opinions and they both could be right.
True.
So as we limit the divine, we make ourselves smaller. So our job is to enlarge that to beyond anything we can comprehend. And then that allows us to be different, all differences, whether they be thought, whatever, and it's still okay, that we can all have contradictory differences and still it's all perfectly well.
The key here is, what I feel is, we need to focus on working on ourselves. We cannot change the world simply by looking out there and seeing what's wrong, what's right, what's wrong. When I change who I am, when I change the way I think, when I become peaceful, when I become balanced, when I don't get ruffled, even if you are insulting me, then I'm calm. If everyone starts focusing on that, the world will be a calm place.
Yes.
So the key is not to look out, but to look within.
We use the term heart. Where and what is the heart?
Well, there are many definitions in Sanskrit. Hridaya, heart is Hridaya. That heart is the quiet mind and emotion. Heart is the essence. When your mind, when your feelings and your thought merge and become one, where there is no conflict, that is really called the heart. It is called, in Sanskrit, antakarana, the inner instrument. And when that heart is pure, when it doesn't have any agitations, when it doesn't have any selfish desires, then the heart means the source, the very core of your being.
Is it the physical? Is it the spiritual, the chakra? Is it the combination of all?
Well, it's the spiritual heart. It's the core of your being. It's almost like if there is a cake and I put one finger into the cake, all around there will be only cake. In the same way, the spirit is the heart of everything. The life consciousness in you and in me is the heart. And generally we feel it near the heart center, and we feel it between the third eye. Different people feel it in different ways. Nobody says, when we say I, we always point to this. No one says I am getting mad. No one points at their knee. So the heart is the sense of I, the sense of who I am.
So the heart is really saying it is the power, the force that animates us becomes...
Absolutely.
We touch that force and it becomes calm, peaceful. It's not about my heart starts beating at a different rate. It's the energy that is at the core of me, the consciousness.
Absolutely.
Okay. Free from cravings. So we've talked about cravings. Cravings is the desire for anything outside of ourselves to make us okay. And that was one of the things, again, the Four Noble Truths. The second truth is the existence of all suffering is due to cravings. You know, that, I mean, is the way Buddha kind of put it. And we all come back, again, these Vedanta, Buddha, Jesus, all coming back to that same place, looking for something outside of ourselves to make us okay.
I think we've talked about it, but in very simple terms, I have to ask myself the question, not where are these cravings coming from for a moment. If I fulfill this craving, then what? Will it all end? Then I have another craving and another craving. So what is it that's going to make me feel complete? That is the question to ask myself. If I fulfill all these desires, then will I be complete? If true, then go ahead, fulfill them. But we find that as our desires get fulfilled, new ones crop up. So the fact of the matter is, let's not worry about whether we have come in with these cravings. Now we have to work with what we have, whether it's past karma, whether it's whatever, my childhood, my issues. Now the point is, if I have these cravings, can I find a way? Can spirituality give me an answer and show me that what you are craving for, reduce it all. It's not the drugs, it's not the alcohol. You're craving for the love. You're craving to be seen. And what you're craving for is already within you. Yes, you have to go to rehab. You have to go to therapy. You have to understand your emotions. But when you work, when you peel off these layers, you realize that no matter how much I get, no matter who loves me, if I don't love myself, I will never feel good about myself. And you are divine. This is the message of Vedanta. You are, in your deepest part, that being. So the more you identify with that part of you, slowly the cravings fall off on their own. It's like a child.
And that brings me to that last phrase, which is liberation. The more they fall off, the freer I become, because I'm not attached to anything outside of myself.
You know, liberation is, again, a big word. People call it nirvana, moksha, enlightenment. Bottom line is, liberated from what? I become liberated from the darkness of my own ignorance.
So I become liberated from the illusion of separateness.
Yes, in an abstract way, yes, but I get liberated from my own jealousies, envy, fear, greed, because now I'm fulfilled. Why should I be jealous of anyone? I'm happy in the happiness of someone else. I'm happy that the other person is rich. That is true liberation. Being fulfilled within yourself, by yourself. And that is the true liberation, is you're liberated from all the lower things in life, the negativity. And who you are has always been there. It's not you're going to get something new or reach a new stage or go into another space. No, you have always been that love. You have always been that fullness. And now you are liberated from everything that was covering it. Liberation from what you are not into what you have always been, but you didn't know it. That's all.
So I have to look at all these things to see what's really behind them.
Yeah. And that even now, even the worst sinner, even the most horrible person has a ray of this spark, has a ray of the divinity in them, has a spark of love. And that if by some grace, if by being touched by something, they can start dropping what is not them, that negativity, that anger, they can start being more in touch with that who they are, who they have always been. This is the truth.
You used the word sin. Would you define sin as the illusion I am something outside of myself?
True. The illusion that it's an error of my thinking, that I am limited, that I don't have enough, that I'm not part of this divinity, that you are separate from me, and I must gain power over you. So sin is to miss that mark. It's the angle of deviation between what I know in day-to-day action. I know to steal is wrong, but I feel incomplete, so I want to steal. And it's an angle of deviation between what I know is right and the action, what I do is wrong, in day-to-day terms. And that angle of deviation becomes the sin. It's an error. And then when I realize it, I integrate. It's a disintegration from my true nature. And the moment I integrate, I'm no more that sinner.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to verse 2. Just as the fire is the direct cause for cooking, knowledge is the direct means of liberation. Compared to all other forms of discipline, knowledge of self is the only direct means of liberation. So let's take that last sentence. Why is knowledge of self the only direct means of liberation?
Because the problem is not something out there. The problem is ignorance of your true nature. And the only antidote for ignorance is true knowledge. Not intellectual knowledge, but true knowledge that is contained in the scriptures, that is in the Vedas. And that knowledge is something that you can start experiencing in yourself. Hey, that I am complete. I don't need anything else to complete. Even if I have the 5th iPad, I'm still going to be miserable if I don't know that I'm okay, no matter what.
The way I interpret this is the author is talking about this being the only path of the yogic paths that's really going to work. So to me, he's discounting the bhakti, the raja, the karmic, saying this self, the knowledge of self is direct means of liberation. Those other things are not going to get me there. I need to have this component in order to get there.
No, it's not that simple.
Okay.
Ultimately, here he doesn't mean head knowledge. When I have pure love for God, when I have pure love for the world, that pure love transmutes into the right self-knowledge. When I have the knowledge of the self, when I know that you and I are one in essence, it translates into loving action. So there's no conflict here. But what he's saying is, if you think that only by doing good action, good deeds, that's enough, I'm a good person, it's not going to get you out of this ignorance of being an ego. You need to have this self-knowledge. So in that sense, it becomes the highest thing. In that sense, he's not negating everything else.
So if I do the service based upon the understanding that I am demonstrating the oneness and I'm helping promote that oneness, that's demonstration of self-knowledge.
Correct.
If I'm sitting there in meditation and I touch that void and realize that that void is you, me, and everybody, I've got self-knowledge. So he's not saying that this particular path is the only path. He's saying all the paths are going to lead me to self-knowledge if I really follow them truly.
Exactly. And without self-knowledge, the ultimate enlightenment, realization cannot come. That's all he's saying. Because in the next verse, he talks that about action is never going to get you there. Why does he say that?
Well, let's go into the next verse. Action cannot destroy ignorance, as it is not opposed to ignorance. Knowledge does verily destroy ignorance, just as light destroys deep darkness. So if I don't know I'm one, and you're one, and we're all one, I'm stuck in ego. And
yes,
that is the ignorance, the not understanding, the knowing, believing, embracing the oneness.
Okay, I'll give you a very simple example from the world.
That wasn't simple,
so many organizations doing service, and people in there who are doing good work, But their action, even though they are doing service, is born out of ignorance, spiritual ignorance I mean, not that they are ignorant, because they're just doing the service without knowing this oneness. But if they know the oneness and then they serve, they won't have any ego and there will be no problem in those organizations.
Exactly.
So this is what he means. Action by itself is a product of ignorance. What is the action? I am incomplete. When I get this, I will be complete. So let's do this action. This is what he means.
Yes.
So all action, karma, is born out of ignorance and can never get you. 1 million plus 2 million plus 7 million plus 8 million will only give you so many million. Finite plus finite plus finite will give you something finite. What you're seeking is infinite. So action will never get you there. That's all he means. Action can only lead to inner purification and egolessness. So action done with love.
Exactly. So it's the intent, the belief behind the action, not the action itself that does it.
And that leads to your mind and heart being pure and quiet. And with that pure and quiet mind, when you apprehend the truth, with that pure and quiet mind, the teaching of any scripture hits you in the right place and you wake up to the next dimension of consciousness. You wake up to who you are. You change your whole life. That's all it is.
And then we go on and teach that.
Share it.
Share it.
Which is what you are doing, which is what I'm trying to do. I can't teach anything to anyone. I can just share it, and if they are touched by it, they have to do the work and change.
We got about 10 minutes left. I want to make a couple of announcements.
Sure.
And then we'll come back. Maybe we'll go to verse 4. Couple of things. This is going to air on Thursday night. By the time this airs, the workshop that Shubhraji will be leading will have already ended for Thursday, but there'll be part 2 on Friday. So it's a free workshop. Donations are accepted. It is various stuff on the Bhagavad-Gita.
It's a complete evening by itself.
It is, okay. But the topic was about Bhagavad-Gita, if I'm okay. It's going to be at the Vedic Chant Center on San Mateo, right alongside the railroad tracks there. The phone number that we've been flashing on the screen, you can call that phone number and get more specifics, but it's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Come early. They're usually packed. If you want to get a mat, there's a limited number of mats, limited number of chairs. Come early, and it'll be a wonderful teaching. I've got a flyer here, and it's too small to show, but we're going to have a guest on our show second week in August. He's going to be part of a panel. His name is Blue Turtle, and he's a spiritual teacher and counselor. This coming Sunday, July 28th, and this is going to be at the Ark, I believe. Yeah, it sounds right. At the Ark, right? Yes, okay. We don't talk off camera, I'm sorry. It's going to be at the Ark. It's from 11 to 5, and there will be a fee, and you need to register and prepay on this. So there's a phone number here. It's 988-5364, and the topic is discovering your intuitive self. So again, that's July 28th, this coming Sunday. You're watching this on, you can be seeing this Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, and you still have time to do this. So call this number or just contact the Ark. Here's the Ark, and tell them you want to get involved. Announcement, myself, you've heard this. This is public access television. You, the public, are a driving force behind this. You know, like what Shubhraji and I were talking about. This is the oneness. I, by myself, just talking. But when you're out there, you become part of it. We become one together. So, love to hear from you. You got any questions? You got any comments? Love to hear from you. My contact information is being flashed on the screen. If there's a topic or a subject you'd like for me to cover, or if you think you'd like to do a show with me, which has happened in the past, contact me. We'd love to hear from you. Just want to let you know that I do spiritual counseling. Basically, I don't, it's kind of what, again, we've been talking about here today, and we've been talking about almost all my shows. There, in my belief structure, there is a basic teaching that underlines all the religions. The only thing that differs one religion to the other is not the basic teaching as much as it's just the rituals and the dogma that they produced around those teachings. I work with those basic teachings and help guide you to implement them in your life and help change your life. So if there are problems that you think can only be solved by dealing with them spiritually, which I believe is every problem is spiritual in nature, I'd be happy to help you, guide you through it. I work on a donation basis, so don't let money become an issue. So we got about 7 minutes left. Think we can do verse 4?
Whatever
Let's
you
give
want.
it a shot. Okay. Verse 4. The self appears to be finite because of ignorance. We come back to that term again. When ignorance is destroyed, it is recognized to be infinite, absolute. The self reveals itself by itself, like the sun when the clouds pass away. So, what's the self?
The self is the one indivisible truth, which is in all hearts, pulsating as life, which is in all of creation, in Mother Earth, all the 5 elements, in every plant, in every animal, in water, in fire. The essence, the existence of that, whether it is inert, whether it is sentient and vibration, is that one spirit vibrating in everything.
And that's the self.
And that's the self.
Okay. You've used the term, the 5 elements. I think most of my viewers are probably familiar with 4. You want to review the 5?
Space, air, fire, water, and earth.
What's space? How do we define space? I mean, I think everybody recognizes those other 4.
It's the most subtle element. Space is that which gives, literally in Sanskrit, space is that, it is called akash. Space is that which gives accommodation to everything to exist, for everything to exist. It's that element. And imagine, space is never conditioned by anything. The space inside this mug or this jar is not conditioned. It appears to be conditioned by this ceramic, by the clay. But if I break this, the clay, the space inside this jar merges with the space outside. So that's the whole idea, that everything is one. That we have to start, we're talking in abstraction, but really the need of the hour is that we have to start living as one spirit, in this one earth. We have to start treating all of life with respect, with love. People, animals, plants, the environment. Where are we separate from anything? So this is just not to get caught up in the form. And this is what the verse says, really, that this ignorance is there, and that ignorance will disappear with the right knowledge.
In a few minutes we got left because of what you said. I want to jump into 5. Verse 5. Constant practice of self-knowledge purifies the egocentric self, which is defiled by ignorance, and having bestowed self-knowledge, it just disappears, just as the powder of the kataka nut settles down after it has cleaned the muddy water. That first part of it, constant practice of self-knowledge. What is that practice?
The practice means seeing, becoming aware of what's really going on. We can do telling of the beads, we can do mantra, we can chant God's name. But the bottom line is seeing, becoming aware of what is life all about. Watching your own emotions. So the practice of vigilance, seeing how did I react to you? Was I kind? Why did I get ruffled when you said something to me? And that means that alertness, that's the practice. And bringing love into the situation where there is conflict, that's the practice.
So the practice is self-awareness. What am I saying? What am I doing? What am I putting out into that space? Am I putting out
really
love
happening?
into that space, or am I withdrawing love from that space?
And who am I feeling threatened by? Why am I feeling threatened? If I'm one with nature, when I go out into nature and I love it, I don't feel threatened by it. I feel one with it. But if someone comes and says something to me, I think they're not part of the whole world. I feel insulted. So the practice is self-awareness, vigilance, and also the practice of bringing love in this understanding that everything is connected, everything is one only. Not only is it connected, there isn't 10,000 different things. They're appearing. The gold is one. It's a chain, it's a ring, it's an earring, but in essence it is still gold. So too, this world is the visible expression of the one consciousness, the one spirit, who is appearing in different forms and faces, but they're nothing but my own self.
And they're challenging us to get past their individual presentations, to get underneath them and see the one.
You said it.
Okay. Got about 2 minutes left. You got a parting thought?
Parting thought is, there is no time to waste. Time is just running. Decide for yourself right now, as you're watching this, what is it that I would like to create in my life in the next 6 months or 1 year? I'm a very practical person. How am I not living the life of spirit? What stops me from living my joy? And when you ask yourself that question, endeavor in your day-to-day life to give up all that is keeping you away from who you truly are. You are divine. You are love. You are one with everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a guest. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to leave you with this thought. Emanuel Swedenborg once said, and I've said this on other shows, but it's worth repeating, our job is to act as if God was supposed to show up, couldn't make it, and asked us to take its place. Are you demonstrating your divinity? Ask the question, see what the answer is, and then act on that. So until next week, blessings to you all. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.